Hello. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. May I ask for your attention, please? Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 29th General Assembly of ICCROM. First of all, I would like to give the floor to Dr. De Caro.
Thank you, Madam President. As you know, this is a very difficult period for not only for the heritage, but I would say for the civil life all over the world. What happened in Paris, still this morning, is affecting the principles of the human life. And it is not only what happened in Paris, but we are assisting since some year now to terrible massacres all over the world, affecting heritage, but I would say affecting our idea of the civil life. Therefore, I would ask to you to observe 1 minute of silence in memory of all the victims and in memory of our idea of heritage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President.
So, as you know, Spain held the presidency in the last General Assembly, and therefore it is again an honor for our country to be here as temporary president. I will stand until the new president is elected. May I introduce now Mr. Martin Frick, Director of Climate, Energy and Tenure Division of FAO.
Thank you, Madam President. Excellencies, Minister Franceschini, Madam President, Director General, distinguished delegates. Welcome to FAO. Welcome on behalf of the Director General of the Food and Agricultural Organization of the UN, of whom I have the privilege to represent today. We just observed a minute of silence for the victims of the Paris massacre. In 2 weeks, the world will again see at Paris for the COP21, the Conference of the Parties for the UNFCCC climate negotiations. I think that this meeting has not been called off and that about 45,000 delegates from all over the world are going to meet in Paris to solve a problem that affects all of us in a spirit of global solidarity is a strong sign in itself. And it's absolutely needed, and I very much welcome that this meeting is taking place, although many delegates, as myself, will come to Paris with a certain amount of nervosity. I'm delighted that you choose climate change as your topic for this year. This is not only what pays me a salary, but this is something I've been feeling very strongly for a long time, for a reason. You professionally look into the cultural heritage of this planet. And we, as mankind, really started to produce cultural heritage the moment when we started to do agriculture. Because with the separation of labor, with the production of food, with the possibility to share labor, we had the possibility to create the cultural heritage that you are protecting today. This actually was only possible in a small climatic corridor that created ideal conditions for human life. We've seen high cultures disappearing before, and if we look back, and interesting enough, more and more studies prove that the main reason for the disappearance of early high cultures are actually failure of agriculture and food systems. The reasons, they sound as modern as today: excessive deforestation, depletion of soils, abuse of water. The problem is basically as old as mankind. The difference, however, that we have today is when the disasters that wiped out high cultures were regionally focused in the past. Today we are coming at the edge of what this planet as a planetary system can deliver. I always half-jokingly say it's easy to talk about climate change because every morning when you're opening the news, you find some new disaster that you can rely to. The piece of news I just found comes from BBC 1 week ago. This year is the hottest year on record. This doesn't sound so exciting because last year was the hottest year on record, and 2012 was the hottest year on record, and next year is very likely to be again the hottest year of record, with the forest fires and the peat fires in Indonesia, which basically in a few days have emitted more CO2 than the annual emissions from my home country, Germany. So it's very likely that we will see more warming and more severe problems. Today we are at an increase of the average temperature in comparison to pre-industrial ages of 1 degree centigrade. That sounds harmless, particularly for a Northern European. You would often wish for a little bit more temperature in your home country. But 1 degree in average doesn't give you the picture. Already now we see in some areas extreme temperatures, including actually this city where we suffered an extremely hot summer, which is not only unpleasant, it can come to the edge of what actually human beings can take. In the Persian Gulf, we got predictions now that summer temperature might exceed 60 degrees centigrade, which basically makes it lethal to go out on the street. But in food systems, the sensitivity is much higher. Even small changes in precipitation, in nighttime temperatures can result in decreased yields and in decreased nutritional value. And if you compare that and if you juxtapose that to the ongoing population growth and the demand for higher quality diets, you see how much of a problem that is. But I don't want to open this conference with just stating the problem, but also stating the solutions. And the cultural heritage is, for us at FAO, a big part of the solution. We are actually quite often going back to how people did successfully agriculture in difficult areas of the world, in water-stressed area of the world. Just recently, the Director General went to Svalbard, which is a seed bank near the Arctic Circle in Norway, together with the Peruvian delegation, retrieve seeds that were deposited from Peru years ago to actually reactivate traditional crops who have proven now to be much more adapted to climate change. So as the saying is, people who are not mindful about their own history have very little chance to survive in the future. And I'm very happy to be here on behalf of FAO and to greet all of you, and I wish you much success in your important work on cultural heritage. And let us see what we can learn from the past and what lessons we have that can help us to strive as mankind also in the future. Thank you very much, and I wish you a successful conference.
And now may I introduce Mr. Dario Franceschini, Minister of Cultural Heritage and Activities and Tourism in Italy.
Grazie signor Presidente di questo invito e grazie signor Direttore Generale. Mi fa veramente piacere aprire qui la vostra Assemblea Generale 2015 riconfermandovi tutto l'onore e l'orgoglio di ospitare a Roma la sede dell'ICCROM e penso che al lavoro straordinario fatto negli anni passati si potrà e si dovrà aggiungere un lavoro ancora più importante negli anni che abbiamo davanti. Purtroppo, lo diceva il direttore generale, davvero viviamo in un momento molto difficile e sono talmente terribili gli episodi che vedono colpire vite umane in modo così assurdo, disumano, violento, crudele, che sembra quasi difficile parlare di tutela del patrimonio. Eppure questo dobbiamo farlo con molta convinzione, con molta determinazione, sapendo che il primo passaggio che la comunità internazionale deve fare è riuscire a far capire che non siamo di fronte a uno scontro tra civiltà. Lo ha detto anche il Presidente Hollande davanti ai parlamentari francesi. Non è uno scontro tra civiltà, è uno scontro tra la civiltà e il terrorismo, tra la civiltà composta da fedi diverse, da culture diverse, da religioni diverse e il terrorismo che invece vuole sconfiggere tutto questo. E io penso che molta attenzione serva anche nei linguaggi. Troppe volte nei giornali di questi giorni abbiamo trovato delle semplificazioni in cui si definisce una parte come cristiani e l'altra parte come islamici. Non c'è nulla di peggio che cadere in questa terribile tentazione di trasformare uno scontro con il terrorismo invece in un problema di scontro tra civiltà. E credo che tutti noi, soprattutto i media che trasmettono sensazioni all'opinione pubblica, devono trasmettere con chiarezza questo messaggio su quello che sta avvenendo e su quello che abbiamo davanti, tragicamente davanti ai nostri occhi. E la prova di questo sta anche nel fatto che nel modo in cui i terroristi scelgono di distruggere il patrimonio culturale. Nelle guerre del passato il patrimonio monumentale, archeologico, culturale veniva distrutto spesso casualmente o incidentalmente nel corso di azioni di guerra o di bombardamenti. Adesso il patrimonio culturale viene distrutto volutamente proprio perché è simbolo di una religione diversa, di una cultura diversa, di sensibilità diverse. E lo stesso meccanismo, l'abbiamo visto purtroppo in diverse occasioni, con cui i terroristi usano le immagini della distruzione di parte del patrimonio, mira esattamente a questo. Vengono distrutti proprio in quanto simbolo di qualche cosa di diverso. Da un lato si distrugge, si filma immaginando con questo di fare una forma di propaganda e dall'altro, come sappiamo, ciò che non viene filmato viene venduto sul mercato illegale per reperti preziosissimi per finanziare il terrorismo stesso. E allora, se è vero come è vero che il patrimonio è patrimonio dell'umanità, World Heritage, come lo definisce l'UNESCO, è evidente che la comunità internazionale deve essere molto attiva, molto presente di fronte alla distruzione di un patrimonio che appartiene solo giuridicamente a un singolo Stato, ma che è appunto patrimonio dell'umanità e se è patrimonio dell'umanità è la comunità internazionale che deve mobilitarsi. Si è discusso molto in questi mesi anche su iniziativa italiana e a noi pare che siano stati fatti passi avanti molto significativi. Da ultimo, qualche giorno fa, l'Assemblea Generale dell'UNESCO ha approvato unanimemente una risoluzione che dà delle linee di indirizzo molto importanti. Da un lato la richiesta alle Nazioni Unite. Il nostro Presidente del Consiglio è intervenuto all'Assemblea Generale esattamente su questo punto, Matteo Renzi, cioè la richiesta che nell'ambito delle missioni internazionali di peacekeeping sia prevista stabilmente una componente che riguarda la protezione del patrimonio culturale. La seconda parte della risoluzione dell'UNESCO chiede invece già direttamente ai singoli Stati di organizzare delle task force nazionali che siano in condizione di intervenire in modo preventivo nella protezione o nella catalogazione o nel recupero di aree che sono state, di beni culturali che sono stati danneggiati, saccheggiati o che rischiano di essere saccheggiati o danneggiati in un immediato futuro. L'Italia si è già organizzata su questo secondo punto ed era naturale farlo, dato che noi abbiamo sollecitato una iniziativa di questo tipo e noi abbiamo una task force già possibile, già operativa, grazie all'esperienza accumulata nei decenni dai nostri carabinieri per la tutela del patrimonio culturale, che sono sicuramente un punto di riferimento in questo settore anche per molti altri Paesi. E quindi a fianco di questi due punti, componente culturale nelle missioni di peacekeeping delle Nazioni Unite e task force nazionale per intervenire in prevenzione o in recupero, penso che ci sia una terza parte in cui il ruolo dell'ICCROM dovrà essere assolutamente centrale, che è la formazione. La formazione di persone che possono intervenire in tutti i settori riguardanti i beni culturali, ma anche specializzazioni particolari rispetto a queste situazioni di crisi, protezione del patrimonio, rispetto a siti che potrebbero essere attaccati, recupero del patrimonio. Noi stiamo organizzando nel nostro Paese una mostra che io giudico molto importante sul lavoro che i nostri soprintendenti hanno fatto durante la Seconda Guerra Mondiale per proteggere il patrimonio che rischiava di essere minacciato dai bombardamenti, dalle azioni di guerra o di essere saccheggiato, come è avvenuto in buona parte dai nazisti. E mi pare che insomma c'è un patrimonio storico di conoscenze che va arricchito e che va soprattutto messo a disposizione di tutti i Paesi. E quindi ogni Paese che ha accumulato know-how, esperienze, eccellenze in questi settori, noi siamo pronti a farlo insieme agli altri, deve mettere a disposizione dell'intera comunità internazionale un progetto di formazione. Come Italia noi abbiamo finanziato in questi mesi un progetto che punta a offrire i nostri istituti di eccellenza, a cominciare dall'Istituto Centrale del Restauro, dall'Opificio delle Pietre, dagli stessi Carabinieri per la tutela del patrimonio, metterli a disposizione di progetti formativi che offriamo gratuitamente ad altri Paesi che vogliono mandare studenti che hanno finito il loro percorso formativo ordinario nelle università, che vogliono specializzarsi in alcuni di questi settori. Ecco, io penso che questa azione sia importante a livello di singoli Stati, che dovremo continuare, ma penso che il coordinamento, il lavoro principale, il lavoro di guida anche di questo debba essere fatto dall'ICCROM, ed è per questo che io confermo davvero il grande onore del nostro Paese a ospitare la sede dell'ICCROM a Roma e la nostra totale volontà come governo italiano di supportare in tutti i modi un'azione così importante, soprattutto in questo momento.
Grazie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Franceschini. And now may I introduce Mr. Mario Giro, Under Secretary of State, Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation.
Thank you, Chair. I will only add some few words to what Minister Franceschini already told us. First of all, of course, I want to thank FAO for hosting us again here and hosting ICCROM General Assembly in its premises, and to extend my warm welcome to the 29th General Assembly of ICCROM, and particularly to the new members, and a special welcome to the delegation of the Russian Federation, which has only recently joined ICCROM membership. As you know, culture is for Italy a natural sphere of interest, nowadays being the country with the largest number of UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and giving great importance to the protection and conservation of intangible and tangible cultural properties. These interests turn out to be a moral imperative. Italy has been cooperating with ICCROM in various domains, to the Minister of Cultural Heritage and the Higher Institute for Conservation and Restoration. Recently, I was at the 38th General Assembly of UNESCO in Paris, and I can personally testify the leading role played by our country at such international level. In particular, The usual cooperation between Italy and ICCROM is now even more crucial in the light of the critical state of danger in which cultural heritage in conflict areas is involved. In this framework, your expertise could play a key role in the action against the destruction of world cultural heritage prompted in the multilateral organizations. As Minister Dario Franceschini already mentioned, a special reference should be given to UNESCO and the Italian initiative for the institution of United for Heritage International Coalition to establish a task force made up of experts, scholars, archaeologists made available by Member States. This quick response task force would be put at UNESCO's disposal for joint emergency intervention in countries that have been hit by conflicts or natural disasters. In order to recover and safeguard cultural and natural heritage and contrast illicit trafficking in this field, the broad-based experience of ICCROM could help to develop a number of measures to counter illicit trafficking of cultural property. Italy and ICCROM are in addition jointly committed in the sector of archaeological missions, such as in Algeria, Israel, Palestine and Libya, for example. For all those reasons, we worked in the past to host one of the first international organizations of the UN Galaxy, or family, devoted to culture, such as your organization, ICCROM, and we recognize today an essential relevance to its activities. Hence, Italy is delighted to express the wish that ICCROM's headquarters will continue to be hosted in our country. As far as a review of fiscal exemption in favor of all officials of the organization is concerned, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is determined to achieve a positive solution of this issue in accordance with the 47 Convention on Privileged Immunities of the United Nations and the 61 Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. In line with our commitment, we have proposed a roundtable among our ministry, the Ministry of Culture and ICCROM, with the aim on the one hand, to explain the technicalities of this amendment, but on the other, aim to investigate all possible proposals to achieve a shared and constructive solution. This could be the occasion to update ICCROM about the last developments of the ongoing high-level contacts among all ministries. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Giro. And now may I introduce Ms. Silvia Costa, Chair of the Committee on Culture and Education of the European Parliament.
Grazie Presidente Anna Schöber, grazie al Direttore Generale Stefano De Caro. Sono molto felice di essere qui con voi alla 29esima Assemblea dell'ICCROM e saluto anche naturalmente tutti gli altri rappresentanti dell'UNESCO, della FAO e oltre naturalmente al Ministro Franceschini e al Sottosegretario Giro e alla Presidenza della Repubblica che è qui rappresentata. Non vi è dubbio che questi giorni drammatici che stiamo vivendo in Europa e nel mondo rendono necessario capire quali azioni possiamo fare per contrastare il degrado che sta avvenendo nei nostri territori e soprattutto per capire una cosa fondamentale, e cioè che c'è una tragica svolta nel Mediterraneo e in Africa. Ricordo che ieri in Nigeria c'è stato un ulteriore grave attentato dopo quello drammatico di Parigi. E l'ICCROM, che è nato praticamente quasi 30 anni fa, per il restauro, come si diceva, del patrimonio dopo la distruzione della guerra mondiale, oggi ha davanti a sé una nuova missione forte dei suoi 134 membri e oltre 100 istituzioni che rappresenta, e cioè quella di capire come si può prevenire, tutelare, rafforzare le competenze, ma anche creare partenariati che possano, con le vostre expertise, con le vostre protagonismo nel campo non solo del restauro, ma di tantissime altre competenze che integrano queste, la possibilità voi avete di essere veramente un forte partner e ponte di relazioni culturali, di capacità di intervento e di anche, diciamo pure, reti di amicizia che in questo momento sono molto importanti anche nell'ambito di una nuova diplomazia culturale europea alla quale anche noi stiamo guardando. Dobbiamo dire una cosa importante, c'è una narrativa da fare anche col vostro aiuto alle nuove generazioni, e cioè che appunto, come diceva prima il Ministro Franceschini, possono essere intrappolate in questa versione dello scontro di civiltà che noi rifiutiamo. Lo rifiutiamo anche come Parlamento europeo e come istituzioni europee, e cioè dire che non è un caso che gli obiettivi del Daesh, della distruzione, siano i luoghi simbolici della libertà, della cultura, dell'educazione, nonché le persone, ma sono le due facce di una stessa medaglia, perché, diceva un mio collega in Parlamento europeo, chi distrugge una vita che è irripetibile, ma chi distrugge il patrimonio distrugge l'umanità, che è il simbolo di una storia comune e di una convivenza comune. E non è un caso che siano state colpite università, pensiamo in Kenya, o redazioni di giornali, bar, ristoranti come a Parigi, luoghi di musica, i luoghi di culto cristiano, ebraico, musulmano, islamico, come chiese, moschee, sinagoghe, o gioielli appunto del patrimonio artistico e culturale. E credo che questo sia un simbolo non solo di un'offesa verso un'altra cultura, ma più profondamente della volontà di colpire i simboli della convivenza, del dialogo interculturale e interreligioso e della storia che è arricchita da diverse identità. Questo è il tema, secondo me, sul quale dobbiamo riflettere, e perciò per l'Europa, che ha fatto della unità nella diversità il suo motto, è particolarmente difficile accettare questa durissima lezione. Io so che voi state facendo un grandissimo lavoro, e anche ci sono delle relazioni molto importanti fra ICCROM e Unione Europea, e abbiamo recentemente ospitato il direttore De Caro in un'importante audizione che la nostra Commissione Cultura, che ho l'onore di presiedere, ha dedicato, Cultura ed Educazione, ha dedicato alla questione della distruzione del patrimonio. Siamo stati il Parlamento europeo, il primo Parlamento in Europa che nell'aprile scorso ha chiesto di considerare la distruzione del patrimonio un crimine contro l'umanità, aderito alla campagna United for Heritage dell'UNESCO, e soprattutto ha invitato anche la Irina Bokova per un importante discorso sul decennale della Convenzione sulla diversità culturale dell'UNESCO e anche in relazione a quella sul patrimonio. Ma io penso che oggi dobbiamo capire che c'è una sfida nuova, perché il patrimonio, come diceva precedentemente anche la FAO, è il patrimonio materiale e immateriale, c'è bisogno di quadri specializzati, di dialogo e soprattutto di considerare anche quella che è oggi il ruolo di una partnership con l'Unione Europea per aiutare a superare un conflitto che si è acuito fra le due sponde del Mediterraneo. Prima di tutto direi che l'ICCROM ha lo statuto in quanto istituzione intergovernativa per rappresentare i governi anche nel dialogo fra loro e per ribadire questo valore universale. L'azione di sensibilizzazione che l'ICCROM sta facendo non solo sugli esperti, ma anche sulle popolazioni locali, penso anche alla Siria, quello che è stato, ricordiamo naturalmente Khaled al-Assad perché è una figura straordinaria, ma abbiamo chiesto di dedicargli l'anno europeo del patrimonio culturale nel 2018, ma soprattutto pensiamo al lavoro di formazione, e questo io credo che sia anche il lavoro che state facendo di fatto e su cui l'Unione Europea sta dando un maggiore risalto all'applicazione concreta della Convenzione di Faro, la Convenzione del Consiglio d'Europa, quella che parla di 3 azioni fondamentali, di una sorta di diritto al patrimonio, e cioè l'azione educativa, l'azione di valorizzazione e di dialogo interculturale e l'azione di prevenzione. Credo che su questo l'ICCROM abbia expertise di grande livello. Come parlamentari europei noi abbiamo approvato una relazione del collega Diaconu sull'approccio integrato al patrimonio culturale, che vuole essere un punto di svolta nella centralità maggiore di questo tema in Europa, che ha visto qualche distrazione, a mio giudizio, negli ultimi anni, per affrontare in modo olistico il tema dell'educazione, valorizzazione e protezione, ma anche della ripresa di una diplomazia culturale europea. Voi sapete che forse che esiste una nostra pressione in questo senso sulla Commissione, e è stata annunciata dall'alto rappresentante Mogherini un'importante iniziativa che sarà presentata entro febbraio, io mi auguro, e cioè una comunicazione della Commissione su una nuova diplomazia culturale europea, che ha dentro una serie di pilastri nel quale secondo me l'ICCROM deve trovare una sua configurazione di partner ufficiale e sostanziale. Abbiamo chiesto due altre cose su cui sta lavorando la Commissione: la direttiva sulla importazione dei beni trafugati o che vengono da paesi in conflitto. Ci siamo accorti che questo non c'è, non era coperta dal punto di vista della normativo. Abbiamo ottenuto che il satellite europeo Copernico avrà nelle sue mission anche quella del monitoraggio del patrimonio, ma chiediamo anche che ci sia l'applicazione concreta di una direttiva che può sembrare secondaria, ma non lo è per chi opera in questo campo in Europa e anche nei partenariati con altri paesi, che è quella diciamo, public procurement, cioè sugli appalti pubblici nell'ambito del restauro e della ricostruzione. Noi dobbiamo fare in modo che sia preso sul serio il fatto che debbano intervenire in questo campo solo chi ha expertise, esperienza e capacità, e su questo c'è un movimento molto forte delle imprese europee per adeguare ad un standard diverso. Abbiamo certamente alcuni programmi, e vado subito alla conclusione, che possono essere diciamo, programmi di sostegno in questo campo e di rapporto, di relazione con l'ICCROM. Io penso senz'altro alla European Neighbour Initiative, che però non ha risorse così straordinarie, ma saranno aumentate con la nuova diplomazia culturale, noi ce lo auguriamo. Abbiamo però anche Horizon 2020, e so che voi fate delle bellissime programmi con loro, parlo in particolare della ricerca e della digitalizzazione del patrimonio, che è una delle grandi sfide. Penso anche a Erasmus Mundus, che è un altro programma di grande interesse e che potrebbe essere collegato anche con l'iniziativa che diceva prima il Ministro Franceschini, di questa circolazione, mobilità dei laureati o anche dei master, che da quest'anno partiranno i master di Erasmus, per quanto riguarda questo ambito. Noi abbiamo aperto in questo momento un discorso molto serio dell'Europa, che dopo le primavere arabe, dopo gli sconvolgimenti anche che ci sono stati e che vede riaffacciarsi finalmente delle democrazie in questi paesi, stiamo lavorando a un accordo quadro con la Tunisia, che sarà il primo di tanti altri nel Nord Africa, e noi abbiamo chiesto di saremo in Tunisia nei prossimi mesi come Commissione Cultura, perché dentro questi nuovi accordi la cultura, il patrimonio, l'educazione devono essere centrali. Vogliamo anche che ci sia un importante diciamo, riconoscimento dell'ICCROM anche come status autonomo nel momento in cui si affidano progetti europei. So che questa è un'azione in corso sulla quale noi siamo impegnati, perché credo che sia giusto e anche in un certo senso più efficace. Ecco, diciamo così. Ultima cosa, devo dire che noi abbiamo molto apprezzato l'intervento del governo italiano e del governo del Ministro Franceschini e anche di alcuni governi europei che sono stati capifila nel chiedere che fosse dato seguito all'azione di contrasto alla distruzione del patrimonio culturale, e credo che questo lavoro fatto in squadra anche col Parlamento europeo, l'UNESCO e i governi ha dato veramente un significato diverso all'azione che voi state facendo, e spero che questo possa vedere collaborazioni molto efficaci nel futuro. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Ms. Costa. And now may I introduce Mr. Louis Godard, Counselor of the President of the Italian Republic for the Preservation of Cultural Heritage.
Thank you very much, Mrs. President. Di fronte a questa assemblea mi viene in mente l'immagine di un amico che abbiamo perso. Parlo di Khaled al-Assad. L'ho incontrato per la prima volta a Palmira. L'ho rivisto a Palmira nel 2010, era una magnifica giornata di sole. Lui era felice, pieno di progetti. Mi faceva scoprire le ultime scoperte di questa città straordinaria, ponte tra Oriente e Occidente. E come sapete, Khaled è stato barbaramente ucciso perché voleva difendere la memoria della Siria. Penso a lui oggi perché lui sarebbe felice di essere con noi e di sentire questa collaborazione internazionale. Siete venuti a Roma da tanti paesi diversi, ognuno portatore di una fede propria, ma mossi da un ideale, quello di difendere la nostra memoria. E Khaled certamente è quello che ha fatto durante tutta la sua vita. È importante ritrovarsi qui a Roma a questa assemblea dell'ICCROM, nella città eterna che è stata anche una città capace di trasmettere all'Europa e al mondo il messaggio civilizzatore del mondo classico e che ha saputo, in definitiva, per secoli, trasmettere un messaggio di tolleranza. A nome del Segretariato Generale della Presidenza della Repubblica vi ringrazio, vi auguro buon lavoro.
And thank you very much, Mr. Godard. We will now give floor to Ms. Véronique Doge, Head of Culture Unit and Officer in charge of UNESCO Regional Bureau for Science and Culture in Europe.
Thank you, Mrs. President. Excellencies, Ministro Franceschini, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Director General of UNESCO, who cannot join us today as the General Conference of UNESCO is still ongoing, I would like to warmly greet all delegates and members of ICCROM today. I would also like to forward the sincere regards of the new director of the UNESCO World Heritage Center, Mrs. Mestil-Rossler, whom you know, and who has appreciated since many, many years the cooperation with ICCROM. On the occasion of the 70th anniversary of UNESCO, we are today in Paris concluding the General Conference, which was saddened by the dreadful events of Paris, where our member states reaffirmed their commitment to uphold UNESCO's ideals of building peace in a world facing challenges from all fronts. Much of our debates have focused on UNESCO's role and relevance in this respect, as it is indeed uniquely positioned in the front line to harness our soft power to further our goals of education, intercultural dialogue, and peace building. In this context, the 1972 World Heritage Convention has a special role to play in delivering those promises. The Convention encompasses the vision that even in the face of violent extremisms, cultural cleansing, and conflicts that tear communities apart and result in persecution on the basis of religion and identity, the universality of our common heritage still prevails. The Convention does not just exist as a legal instrument, but it also provides concrete tools for us to take action against threats to heritage and ensure that heritage is protected and conserved for future generations. The joint efforts of UNESCO and all its partners have been instrumental in this critical stage. I know that we can count on ICCROM and all our member states, ICCROM in particular as a long-standing and valued companion of UNESCO. UNESCO and ICCROM indeed enjoy a very special relationship. I do not need to recall that it was in 1956 that ICCROM was established by UNESCO, and it has been its main partner in all matters related to cultural heritage conservation. ICCROM, along with the two advisory bodies to the World Heritage Convention, ICOMOS and IUCN, is explicitly mentioned in the text of the Convention. Over the years, ICCROM has substantially contributed to UNESCO's mandate in this field through all its programs and the development of resource manuals which enhance theoretical concepts as well as practical approaches. Over the past year, the World Heritage Committee, many of you being part of it, strongly supported UNESCO's effort to safeguard heritage under threat from violent extremisms.
At the 39th session of the World Heritage Committee, it adopted the Bonn Declaration as a statement by the international community to strengthen the mobilization of stakeholders and stand together with countries where cultural and natural heritage have come under threat. These last 2 years, we have witnessed destruction of cultural heritage at a considerable stage in Syria, Iraq, Libya, and Yemen. UNESCO has been working in close collaboration with ICCROM Athar, providing support to Syrian cultural heritage professionals, but also on risk preparedness and management in Libya and Yemen. Apart from human-made threats, natural disasters have been posing great challenges for safeguarding both natural and cultural heritage. This year has been practically dramatic. First, a Category 5 tropical cyclone struck the archipelago of Vanuatu, leaving a long trail of destruction. Then the devastating earthquake that struck Nepal on 25 April 2005 resulted in huge loss of human life and extensive damage to heritage. And only a month ago, another earthquake hit the north of Afghanistan as well as northwest Pakistan, causing damage of a number of precious cultural heritage sites. I would like to take this opportunity to convey UNESCO's deepest sympathy to those states parties who suffered from the catastrophes and appreciate their efforts in emerging response to the disaster, including immediate and urgent mitigation measures. As UNESCO member states have reiterated during the General Conference, implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development will feature as a significant part of our work in the years to come. In this context, the policy initiative to integrate sustainable development perspective in the processes of the World Heritage Convention is a positive step, as it recognizes that beyond protecting outstanding universal value of heritage, the Convention also contributes to the well-being of communities. Given the rising threats faced by heritage and the tremendous potential for heritage to be a rallying point to celebrate the diversity of cultures and our shared values, it is crucial that the credibility of the Convention continues to be enhanced. The UNESCO-ICCROM partnership is not limited to the 72 World Heritage Convention. ICCROM also contributes substantially to the implementation of the UNESCO Other Cultural Convention, notably the 2003 Convention for the Safeguarding of Intangible Cultural Heritage, the 1970 Convention fighting illicit traffic, and the Museum Programme. In this respect, I am pleased to announce you that the General Conference has just adopted the new global recommendation on the protection and promotion of museums and collections, their diversity and their role in society. We hope that ICCROM will be associated with us for the implementation of this new cornerstone of international public policies. Ladies and gentlemen, we will focus during this session on the topic of climate change and natural disasters. Climate change, according to professionals, is arguably the greatest environmental and social issue of our time. Yet, such changes do not affect all cultural and natural heritage sites in the same way, and understanding its impact is relevant to the preservation of the sites. Importantly, the sites have also harbor options to mitigate and adapt to climate change. And also, cultural heritage convey traditional knowledge that builds resilience for change to come and leads us to a more sustainable future. This challenge requires the development of new approaches to ensure that all actors, especially local communities and authorities, take responsibility for the collective preservation of our common heritage. We must also continue to share best practices and to protect heritage through disaster risk reduction. We need to promote the application of ICCROM's training resources manuals, which are so useful. By doing so, I believe we are addressing one of the most critical challenges of the 21st century. UNESCO appreciates that ICCROM has regularly reaffirmed its commitment to its global action for the protection of the heritage and to forward-looking approaches. I also want to reiterate our thanks to all stakeholders of the Heritage Conventions, states parties, advisory bodies, NGO observers, local governments and communities for their dedication and commitment to uphold the spirit of the Convention. I wish you all a very successful General Assembly and thank you for your attention.
And now we give the floor again to Mr. Stefano De Caro, Director General of ICCROM.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dear members and friends of the ICCROM's community, it is my honor and privilege to welcome at this new meeting of the General Assembly of all of you, the member states delegates, the observers, the inauguration guests. This will be an important assembly. You will deal with the problems both of the climate change. You will hear in some short time the thematic discussion by Mr. Jerry Velasquez, but also for the political situation. We live in a situation that Pope Francis has correctly described as a piecemeal World War III, or in the more rude language of the numbers, in a world where only 11 countries out of 162 are not involved in any conflict, according to the Global Peace Index of the Institute for Economics and Peace. Nevertheless, your very presence here today, despite the conflicts that affect most of your countries, of our world, is the sure sign of a hope, more of a firm confidence that the heritage can still be an horizon in which mankind can share principles of peace, solidarity, and coexistence. It is easier, perhaps, to find solidarity in the aftermath of catastrophes, when basic values like lives, houses have been affected, and, thanks to God, solidarity in those moments comes out immediately from the emotion. More difficult, as you know, is to show solidarity beyond the boundaries for the heritage in crisis times. It requires awareness, the dissemination of a new shared culture, overcoming centuries in which heritage was used to build identities founded marking and underlining victories, dominations, superiorities of power, races, communities. It is a travel that mankind has started only about 1 century ago, not so far, and not without a step backward. If we put on the scales man-made destructions and the shared projects of restoration, of dialogue, we would certainly see how we are still at the beginning of our travel. A travel that, on the other side, we could not give up under the penalty of losing our own humanity. For this reason, we believe that more than ever in these difficult times, ICCROM and its network of partners must commit to working even harder, integrating our actions with those of other organizations, national, international, NGOs, thanking them for their commitment and for the job they do for the common cause. So, by instance, as a little example, the third course that our Attar Center has concluded a few days ago in Tunis to improve the capacity of Libyan and Yemeni professionals to react to the current situation is a good example of goodwill shown by many partners, UNESCO, United Arab Emirates, Institut National du Patrimoine Tunisien, and more relevant, Libyans, the Libyan professionals from all the country. A drop in the sea, just a little example, it's true, but the hope that I saw in the eyes of those colleagues to rebuild a new, more stable and just community based on the heritage values will be a powerful tool. We have the duty to continue to sustain it in Libya and elsewhere, else on the name of martyrs like our Syrian colleague Khaled al-Saad, who was just by a member of a UNESCO course in 2005. We can call also an alumnus of ICCROM. Let me thank the Italian government for the long commitment since 1958 toward conservation of heritage worldwide and toward ICCROM, that their representatives have just remembered, from the funding of the restoration of the new premises to the other initiative that Minister Franceschini took to request to the Parliament, to the Italian Parliament, an additional fund to cover the long accrued debt for the cost of maintenance of the current premises. I hope that the members of the Parliament will hear this is what is a need for us, and as you know, it's very important. Nevertheless, I could not omit that the promised resolution of the issue of the taxation of the ICCROM employees resident in Italy through the exchange of notes amending the headquarters agreement of 1960 that we approved some months ago upon proposal of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had no follow-up until now. I heard with great pleasure Subsecretary Mr. Giro announcing that we will have a discussion over this in the next future. Therefore, as the financial consequence of this issue, combined with the previous one, is heavily affecting the sustainability of the programme and budget for the next biennium, ICCROM's Council has approved the programme and budget, but joining a declaration urging the Italian government for a rapid resolution of the whole finances issue concerning Italy as host country of ICCROM. For giving us the possibility to continue to work in an effective way, how it is in our tradition, let me, in conclusion of my short speech, greet warmly the other countries that have shown confidence in us in many ways, by doing a considerable effort to come back in the organization, such as the Russian Federation, or the ones that have sustained with extraordinary contributions on, in other ways, our programs, like the United Arab Emirates, which have helped us to found our first regional office, the Center Shatar in Sharjah, approved by this Assembly in the last 2 venues, or other countries which some years ago since some years are sustaining in a particular way our programs, such as Korea, the People's Republic of China, Japan, United States, France, Netherlands, Switzerland, to mention just some. But today I have also to express my thanks for collaborating to the organization of this meeting, to our host organization, the FAO, to the press, to the sponsors that helped us to make less basic our welcome, and finally to wish to all of you a fruitful work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Caro. And now the last speech will be conducted by Mr. Mohamed Al-Muhairi, Director General of the National Council of Tourism and Antiquities of the United Arab Emirates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. أصحاب المعالي، أصحاب السعادة، السادة الوفود المحترمين، الأخوة والأخوات الحضور الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نلتقي اليوم في الدورة 29 لاجتماعات الجمعية العمومية للمركز الدولي لدراسات صون الممتلكات الثقافية في ظل ظروف دولية بالغة التعقيد. فقد ظهرت خلال السنوات الأخيرة نزاعات وحروب في مناطق متعددة من العالم أدت إلى أحداث خراب وتدمير ونهب لكثير من الممتلكات الثقافية في البلدان التي شهدت تلك الأحداث، مما تسبب في فقدان أجزاء من إرث إنساني لا يمكن تعويضه، خاصة وأن بعض تلك الممتلكات قد سبق لها أن أدرجت ضمن قائمة التراث العالمي، وبالتالي فإن فقدان تلك الممتلكات سيشكل خسارة للبشرية جمعاء. أيها السادة المحترمين، إن حجم تلك النزاعات واتساع رقعتها ومدى الدمار الذي خلفته في الممتلكات الثقافية سوف يؤدي بكل تأكيد إلى زيادة حجم المسؤوليات الملقاة على عاتق المنظمة، فالأمر يحتاج من إكرم والعاملين فيها إلى المزيد من العمل المتواصل لمراقبة ومتابعة الممتلكات المتضررة وتقدير حجم الأضرار التي لحقت بها، ووضع الخطط والبرامج لإعادة صونها وترميمها والحفاظ عليها مرة أخرى، وذلك بالتعاون والتنسيق مع باقي المنظمات الدولية ذات العلاقة والدول المالكة لتلك الممتلكات. لذلك فإننا نرى أن حجم المسؤوليات المترتبة على المنظمة قد أصبحت في ازدياد مستمر نتيجة لتلك الظروف، الأمر الذي يتطلب من الدول الأعضاء إلى تقديم المزيد من الدعم مع الإكرام لتمكينها من القيام بمهامها في الحفاظ على الممتلكات الثقافية أينما وجدت ودون تمييز بين الدين أو لون أو عرق. أيها السادة المحترمين، إن دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة تعمل جاهدة من أجل استمرار هذه المنظمة للقيام بدورها المتنامي، ونظرا لأهمية هذا الدور قدمنا الرعاية الكاملة لإنشاء مركز إقليمي للمنظمة في المنطقة العربية، وبرعاية مباشرة من صاحب السمو الشيخ الدكتور سلطان القاسمي حاكم إمارة الشارقة، حيث باشر المركز عمله في مجال تدريب الكوادر الوطنية في دول المنطقة، وقد نفذ العديد من البرامج الخاصة بهذا الأمر خلال السنوات الماضية. كما أن المركز يعمل على تقديم الخبرة والمساعدة في الإشراف على مشاريع الصون والحماية التي تم تنفيذها في بعض دول المنطقة. في الختام اسمحوا لي أن أقدم الشكر والتقدير لكافة العاملين في هذا الصرح العريق على جهودهم من أجل الحفاظ على الإرث الإنساني وحمايته من الزوال والاندثار، متمنيا لاجتماعكم هذا التوفيق والنجاح واتخاذ الإجراءات المناسبة التي من شأنها تعزيز صون وحفظ الممتلكات الثقافية في شتى بقاع العالم، وتطوير وبناء القدرات المحلية أينما وجدت لتحقيق الأهداف السامية التي أنشئت من أجلها هذه المنظمة. شكرا لكم.
Well, thank you very much for these very inspiring and interesting speeches. And now we will introduce item 2 of the agenda. But for this, I would like to announce that there will be 2 moments in the agenda in which member states will be able to make statements. Now, this is the first moment, and it will be for specific statements. We only have a very limited time of maximum 15 minutes. But please be aware that general issues can be raised in a more specific session foreseen under item 21 of the agenda. So any country wishing to make a statement now would raise their country card, please. United States of America.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Director General, Your Excellency, the Minister of Cultural Heritage and Tourism, and distinguished delegates, I'm honored to represent the United States government at this 29th General Assembly of ICCROM. The United States has been a proud and active member of ICCROM since 1971, and we're pleased to see ICCROM's expansion of its activities and continued commitment to its mandate to promote the preservation of all types of cultural heritage. I would like to acknowledge and welcome the Russian Federation as the newest of ICCROM's member states. My delegation would like to recognize and thank ICCROM, and particularly Director General Stefano De Caro, for his hard work and dedication over the last 2 years. As has been said, these last 2 years have been especially challenging for those working in heritage preservation. In April of this year, we were reminded of the power of natural disasters to devastate our historic treasures by witnessing the damage the earthquake in Nepal caused to many monuments, temples, and other historic buildings and museums. We noted and appreciated ICCROM's role in immediately contributing to the efforts to assess the damage in Nepal and then to train key museum, archive, and other heritage professionals on the ground, supporting Nepal's cultural heritage recovery priorities and goals. Similarly, the United States recently awarded $320,000 in cultural preservation grants to begin the structural assessment and restoration of several historic monuments in Kathmandu and Patan Durbar squares. Then, of course, there's the painful and ongoing news of the looting and intentional destruction of ancient and irreplaceable sites and artifacts in Syria and Iraq at the hands of ISIL in a vain attempt to rewrite history and eviscerate cultural patrimony. Not stopping at the destruction of monuments and sites, ISIL has now resorted to attacks on heritage professionals and scholars, such as Khaled al-Assad, who was referred to earlier, who, like many of you here today, dedicated his life to safeguarding heritage. The international community must work together to protect the shared legacy of ancient civilizations in the Middle East. ICCROM has answered the call during this biennium through its workshops on managing risks to heritage in cases of emergency and through ongoing training of heritage professionals from Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Libya, Egypt, and Tunisia. We also applaud the establishment of ICCROM's new Athar Regional Conservation Center in the United Arab Emirates and that government's generous contribution to make possible ICCROM's regional platform for training and information sharing in the Middle East. The United States is complementing ICCROM's efforts through its own initiatives to manage the risk that terrorism and illicit trade in cultural property pose to cultural patrimony. Secretary of State John Kerry announced last year a partnership with the Overseas Schools of Oriental Research to comprehensively document the condition of and threats to cultural heritage sites in Iraq, Syria, and to assess their future restoration, preservation, and protection needs. In Iraq, the United States government has provided over $32 million since 2003 for a broad range of cultural heritage projects, including infrastructure upgrades to the National Museum of Iraq, establishment of a cultural heritage preservation training institute for Iraqis in Erbil, and site management planning and conservation work at the site of ancient Babylon. For Syria, the Department of State produced a map featuring 1,000 important museums, historic buildings, and archaeological sites to raise awareness of threats to Syrian cultural heritage, and also sponsored the publication of the emergency red list of Syrian cultural objects at risk to alert international customs authorities to the illicit trafficking of Syrian artifacts. The United States has also sponsored the publication of similar red lists in partnership with the International Council on Museums for Iraq, Egypt, Haiti, Colombia, China, Central America and Mexico, Cambodia, Peru, and Afghanistan. Increasing capacity for the emergency preservation of cultural heritage is needed now more than ever, and the United States encourages ICCROM to increase its attention to present and emerging threats to heritage in all its forms and in all regions. The thematic debate on the impacts of climate change on cultural heritage is a very welcome initiative. Similarly, the United States, through the Smithsonian Institution, is pleased to be partnering with ICCROM to bring its flagship course on first aid to cultural heritage in times of crisis to Washington, D.C. next spring. Beyond this critical work on disaster risk management, we encourage ICCROM to continue efforts to further solidify its unique role as a leader in science-based conservation training, including the preservation of sound and image heritage. As a research driver, standard setter, and disseminator of conservation best practices, and as a clearinghouse of information through its renowned library and archive. We are all aware of the challenges that ICCROM faces in terms of matching available resources to its growing mandate. I would like to commend ICCROM for its judicious use and continuing effective stewardship of its available resources. The United States notes your creativity and success in looking for other resources and partnerships that can assist you in fulfilling your mission. We note the ongoing effort that ICCROM is undertaking to resolve issues related to tax reimbursement and building maintenance costs with the Italian government, and we look forward to a resolution in the near future. We also congratulate ICCROM on the selection of its new Chief Management Officer, Sophie Janowski, and we welcome you, Sophie, and the wealth of applicable experience you bring to the ICCROM family. The United States cares deeply about the preservation of cultural heritage, and our delegation to this assembly is a reflection of the priority our government places on conserving our historic treasures, both domestically and globally. Among those present here are representatives of the Department of State's Cultural Heritage Center, which specializes in collaborating with partners around the world to safeguard cultural heritage, including through its Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation, which supports the preservation of cultural sites, cultural objects, and forms of traditional cultural expression in more than 125 developing countries around the world, including over 150 projects in 89 World Heritage Sites. The United States National Park Service preserves natural and cultural resources in our national park system, and we're joined by the Executive Director of its National Center for Preservation, Technology, and Training, which shares a mandate with ICCROM in that it is charged with coordinating research, disseminating information, and providing training about new technologies for preservation. Finally, we are pleased to have representation for the Smithsonian Institution, the world's largest museum and research complex, whose mission is to shape the future by preserving our heritage, discovering new knowledge, and sharing our resources with the world. Beyond these agencies represented at this assembly, there are several other U.S. government entities actively engaged internationally on cultural heritage preservation, showing our whole-of-government approach that the United States takes to this essential work. We look forward to continuing to support you, Mr. Director General, as well as your team and the networks that you empower around the world in support of helping people conserve their own cultures. To that end, the United States will continue its commitment to multilateral action to address our greatest shared challenges in this field, both immediate and long-term. Thank you.
Thank you very much, United States of America. Does any other country would like to make a statement? We're very short of time. I think Norway. I haven't seen if there's... So, oh my God. We have a very limited time, so we accept Norway in the first place. And
Egypt and Libya.
Algeria, France, and Libya? Egypt, okay. Sorry, I don't see well from here. Egypt, France, Libya, Egypt, France, Libya, and Algeria is the first before Norway? Oh my God. Okay. Well, Algeria is the first before Norway? So this, excuse me, I might have made mistakes because I can't see all the... So the first country would be Algeria, followed by Norway, Egypt, France, Libya, and Sudan. Please make sure that we have a very limited time. Thank you. No coffee. So, Algeria, please.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, Mesdames, Messieurs. Donc, au nom de ma délégation, la délégation d'Algérie, je voudrais associer ma voix donc, à la délégation qui m'a précédée, celle des États-Unis, pour exprimer nos remerciements et nos félicitations au directeur général de l'ICCROM, à toute son équipe et au Conseil pour tous les efforts qu'ils ont déployés pour assurer la réalisation des objectifs nobles de la conservation et de la restauration du patrimoine culturel dans le cadre d'un mandat international très exigeant en termes de rigueur et de qualité. Nous sommes particulièrement satisfaits des résultats et de la conduite des programmes qui est persévérante en visibilité et en impact. Bien que mon pays, l'Algérie, n'a pas bénéficié substantiellement de ces nombreux programmes, demeure fortement attaché depuis son adhésion donc, à cette organisation pour souscrire au label de la bonne pratique en matière de conservation et de restauration, donc incarné par l'ICCROM. Et l'Algérie a suivi d'une manière ininterrompue depuis son adhésion à toute la traversée de cette organisation et toutes les conjonctures, donc qu'elles soient apaisées ou mouvementées comme c'est le cas aujourd'hui, donc avec la crise financière et surtout la situation d'un conflit sans précédent, celui du terrorisme, qui a pris pour cible le patrimoine et qui interpelle aujourd'hui l'ICCROM, non pas en tant que médecin du patrimoine, mais en tant que pompier du patrimoine. Cette nouvelle situation exige donc de nouveaux paradigmes, de nouveaux réflexes et de nouveaux comportements et surtout de grande solidarité et de nouveaux défis donc, qui dépassent largement donc, les capacités surtout financières de l'ICCROM. C'est pour tout cela que nous devons nous associer et associer nos efforts, donc un effort en fait, un effort de guerre pour le patrimoine. L'acte symbolique exprimé par les Émirats arabes unis, donc traduit par la création d'un centre affilié à l'ICCROM, témoigne justement de cet effort d'intégration et de renforcement de nos capacités d'intervention sur le patrimoine. Nous lui souhaitons donc plein succès. Donc je parlerai aussi du centre de catégorie 2 du Bahreïn qui aussi appartient donc à ce corpus d'institutions de renforcement, le centre de catégorie 2 de protection du patrimoine immatériel qui vient d'être créé à Alger, et le centre de catégorie 2, donc je voulais le citer, celui du Fonds du patrimoine mondial africain. Donc toutes ces réalisations donc, renforcent donc, notre corpus de renforcement de nos capacités. Ceci me ramène donc à exprimer mes remerciements et notre gratitude au gouvernement italien qui a porté le flambeau de l'ICCROM donc, depuis sa création, donc, en relevant tous les défis pour garantir sa durabilité. Nous lui renouvelons notre hommage et nous l'encourageons donc à poursuivre sa noble mission vis-à-vis de l'ICCROM. Et je voudrais terminer enfin donc en félicitant la Fédération de Russie d'avoir donc réadhéré à notre organisation, donc l'ICCROM. Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Algeria. Now is the turn of Norway.
Norway is grateful for the opportunity the thematic General Assembly is giving us to take advantage of this gathering of many experts to share knowledge on a subject matter which affects us all and will do so increasingly in the coming years. ICCROM not only leads in the field of capacity building in matters concerning cultural heritage, but as we will see during these days in Rome, is demonstrating the importance of creating an arena in which to share this knowledge. Norway applauds the idea and would like to thank the Council for implementing the initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. Now is the turn of Egypt, please.
شكرا السيدة الرئيسة، السادة الوزراء والسفراء أعضاء الوفود، شكرا لكم لإعطاء هذه الكلمة. مصر كواحدة من الدول صاحبة التراث العالمي وكجزء من الإقليم العربي هي أيضا تعاني مما تعاني منه هذه المنطقة ككل، ويمكن من أخطر ما نعاني منه الآن الإرهاب العام الذي يواجه المنطقة، وأيضا الحفر الخلسة أو نهب الآثار من هذه الدول والتجارة الغير شرعية. في هذا الصدد مصر تتعاون مع جميع المنظمات الدولية، اليونسكو، الإكروم، وأيضا الآيكوم والمجتمع الدولي في العديد من الاتفاقيات، وكذلك مع المنظمة الإقليمية آيكروم آثار في الشارقة. وفي هذا الصدد أيضا مصر تقوم حاليا بتطوير المناطق الأثرية، دعم المخازن بالتكنولوجيا الحديثة لكيفية الحفاظ عليها، تطوير المتاحف المصرية. نحن حاليا بصدد إنشاء متحفين كبيرين، المتحف المصري الكبير ومتحف القومي للحضارة المصرية الذي تدعمه منظمة اليونسكو. وأيضا هناك العديد من المؤتمرات التي نظمت مؤتمر مع اليونسكو و10 دول عربية في مايو الماضي، خرجنا منه إلى ضرورة التعاون الدولي والتعاون الإقليمي لمواجهة هذه المخاطر، وكانت من نتائجه أن تمت اتفاقية ما بين مصر والأردن، وحاليا نعد اتفاقية مشابهة بين مصر والسودان، ولكن نرجو أن تكون هذه الاتفاقية المعنية بتبادل المعلومات واسترداد الآثار عامة للإقليم العربي ككل، حتى يمكن أن يكون هناك قوة واحدة في المنطقة الإقليمية. أيضا هناك العديد من الدورات التدريبية التي تتعامل مع كيفية الصيانة وحفاظ على الآثار، وأيضا كيفية التعامل مع الكوارث والأزمات التي يمكن أن تنم بالمنطقة. وكان هناك المؤتمر الذي أقيم في مصر في يناير 15 برعاية ICCROM أيضا، ولكن ICCROM الإقليمي الشارقة، وكان من نتائجه أن أسست لأول مرة في وزارة الآثار بمصر إدارة خاصة للتعامل مع الأزمات والكوارث، وأخذت كوادرها ممن تم تدريبهم من خلال هذه الدورة. وبالتالي أعتقد يجب أن تعمم مثل هذه الإدارات الخاصة بالتعامل مع الأزمات والكوارث في جميع الدول التي تحظى بالعديد من التراث. لا أطيل عليكم، وأتمنى للمؤتمر النجاح والتوفيق. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much, Egypt, and it's France now.
Madame la Présidente, merci de me donner la parole. Tout d'abord, la France souhaiterait marquer sa reconnaissance pour les nombreuses marques de sympathie recueillies dans cette enceinte au lendemain des attentats du 13 novembre et pour la minute de silence observée en mémoire des victimes. À tous, un grand merci. Deuxièmement, nous souhaiterions porter à la connaissance de l'Assemblée générale de l'ICCROM cette information qui nous en tombée tout à l'heure, selon laquelle le président François Hollande a annoncé hier devant l'UNESCO que la France allait instaurer un droit d'asile pour les œuvres d'art menacées par les terroristes de Daesh. Voilà, merci de votre attention.
Thank you very much, France. Now is this the turn of Libya.
بسم الله. السيدة الرئيسة، السادة الحضور، في البداية أتوجه لك بالشكر والتقدير لمنحنا هذه الفرصة للحديث. لا يخفى عليكم ما آلت إليه الأحوال والأوضاع الأمنية في ليبيا، فلقد تكبدنا مشقة كبيرة لحضورنا لهذا المؤتمر، وذلك بسبب الاضطرابات الأمنية. فالجميع يعرف ويعي جيدا ما وصل إليه الحال في بلادنا نتيجة النزاعات المسلحة، مما لم يسمح لنا حتى في التفكير في مسألة التغير المناخي وتأثيره في الممتلكات الثقافية. فالوضع الأمني في ليبيا أسوأ مما تتصورون أو تعرفون، فهناك اعتداءات كبيرة من أفراد طبيعيين نتيجة لعدم وعيهم بهذا الموروث وأهميته، وهناك اعتداءات أخرى والتي تحدث بين الجماعات المسلحة وتتسبب في إلحاق أضرار كبيرة بالمباني التاريخية والثقافية في ليبيا. أن الانفلات الأمني في ليبيا وغياب الأمن قد أوضح لنا بصورة جلية وواضحة غياب الوعي الثقافي بأهمية الموروث التاريخي، ولقد وثقنا كل هذه الاعتداءات التي حدثت على المباني التاريخية وقدمناها في صورة تقرير متكامل لمنظمة اليونسكو. إننا نرغب في اعتبار جرائم الاعتداء على الممتلكات الثقافية ترتقي لمستوى جرائم الحرب، لأن الاعتداء على الإرث الثقافي هو اعتداء على الإنسانية جميعا. نحتاج إلى مزيد من الدعم والمساندة لحماية موروثنا الثقافي. وأخيرا نتقدم بالشكر والتقدير للسيد زكي أصلان وزملائه بمكتب الشارقة لما بذلوه من مجهود كبير في سبيل حضورنا لهذا المؤتمر، وشكرا.
Thank you very much. And now the last turn is for Sudan. Any other country who would like to make statements? We will have time on Friday for this. So please, Sudan.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, Director General of ICCROM, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Sudan would like to thank and compliment ICCROM for the excellent organization of this General Assembly and would like to acknowledge the great role of ICCROM in preserving the world's cultural heritage in its wide spectrum. Sudan would like to express its gratitude and appreciation to ICCROM Athar, the Regional Conservation Center for Arab countries in Sharga, for its important role in preserving the Arabs' cultural heritage and risk preparedness and mitigation measures. I would like to seize this opportunity to thank His Royal Highness, the ruler of Sharga, for accepting to restore the archaeological site of Sawakin in Sudan. Nowadays and in the future, ICCROM will be having a pivotal role in recovery and restoration of the cultural heritage recently damaged in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Great efforts are needed to build the capacities of World Heritage professionals in tackling the challenges of climate change, raising the awareness of our societies and young generation in preserving and protecting our cultural heritage is also highly needed. In Sudan, we have taken a series of measures to preserve our cultural heritage against the different threats, such as reinforcing our Antiquities Ordinance, working thoroughly to ratify the UNESCO conventions, especially that of 1970, widening the international collaboration in the conservation and restoration of our antiquities. And here I would like also to thank the State of Qatar for the allocation of $135 million to preserve and protect the Nubian heritage in Sudan. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for these speeches. And before we go to the coffee break, I have to make some announcements. Well, as we refer to the Article 30.1 of the Rules of the Procedure of the General Assembly, the official languages, as you know, of this General Assembly are English and French. For that, we have the interpreters services, but ICCROM is also ensuring passive Spanish interpretation for the Spanish-speaking countries. And in this sense, we also count with a very recent Spanish version of the Statutes, which has been officially translated by courtesy of Chile through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. 3 more reminders. I would like to remind everyone to wear the badge at all times, since you are in FAO, if you might be denied to access if you have the badge with you. We also remind you to keep the mobiles switched off during the works of the General Assembly, and please be as punctual as possible when you come back from the coffee break. So we consider this official inauguration closed. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, please. I don't have a... Ladies and gentlemen, please. Oh, that works. Okay. So we will now proceed to the next item. May I introduce item number 3 of the agenda, the election of the President and 3 Vice Presidents of the 29th session of the General Assembly. Before we do that, I would like to introduce you the new voting system. If you look at your desk, you will see a small item. Little machine, okay, which has numbers on it, and 1, 2, 3 have also colors on them. Now, there you have the guide. Number 1, which is marked in green, if you would press it, let's not do it now, but if you would press it, you would vote yes. Yellow, number 2, it's to abstain. And red, number 3, is to vote against. So this is a test voting. This is not a real voting. Would you mind pressing only one button, each of you, and then we will see if the counting system works, please. Have all of you voted? Yes? Could we see their counting? Yes? Okay, it takes a few seconds. Doesn't work? Okay. Hold on. Some countries say that when they push the button, the light, the corresponding light does not switch off. Yes. 57, abstain, 9, no. Okay, supposed to work? Well, it was only a trial, don't worry, don't panic. We will vote by acclamation, as always, but this is just a trial, and see if it works for next time. So, we announced the proposal from Council as to the names and put forward for the President and 3 Vice Presidents of the 29th General Assembly. We announced the name of Ms. Orizia Luchak from Canada as a candidate for President of the General Assembly as proposed by Council and invite the delegates to proceed for election by acclamation. Thank you very much. And the vice presidents, we announce the name of Ms. Valerie Magar from Mexico as vice president and as proposed by the council, and invite the delegates to proceed for election by acclamation. On the second, we propose Mr. John Kimaro of the United Republic of Tanzania for Vice President as proposed by the Council, and invite the delegates to proceed for election by acclamation. And finally, we propose Mr. Nagi Saleh Tawaba from Yemen for Vice President as proposed by Council, and invite delegates to proceed for election by acclamation. Well, my congratulations to all the elected, and now I leave this place for the newly elected President. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you.
I would like to thank the Assembly for their confidence and for having elected me. I would like to thank my predecessor as Chair of the General Assembly at the previous General Assembly, Ms. Marianne del Aguido from Spain, and to Ms. Anna Schobel, who served as temporary President of the GA this morning. Delegates, I count on your support to effectively and efficiently conduct this meeting over the next 3 days. I welcome the newly elected Vice Presidents, and I would ask that they join me now on the podium. Oh, they're here. They did that while I was speaking. And then I'd like to proceed with the agenda, as we are running late this morning, and I'd like to proceed to election of the committees. So this is number 4 on your agenda. I'd like to announce for the Credentials Committee the names and countries of the 5 candidates for members of the Credentials Committee of the General Assembly as proposed by Council, and I would invite those delegates to proceed for election by acclamation. If you would be so kind as when I call your name, if you would stand, please. So the Credentials Committee, from Canada, Ms. Patricia Kell. From Japan, Mr. Wataru Kawanabe. Yes, thank you. From Norway, Ms. Hanna Gosonen Giran. From Romania, Mr. Victor Dan Kiselewicz. And from the USA, Mr. Robert Merkel. Thank you. I would also now announce the names and the countries of the 5 candidates for the members of a Candidatures Committee for the GA, as proposed by the Council, and invite delegates to proceed for election by acclamation. If you again would stand. From Armenia, Ms. Gayen Kasnati. From Bahrain, Mr. Salman Al-Mahari. From Estonia, Ms. Annalie Randla. From Guatemala, Ms. Blanca Nino. And from the Islamic Republic of Iran, Mr. Korosh Jafari. Thank you very much. I would now request that the committees retire to the offices to carry out their work. And so if you could follow the staff, they will be waiting for you at the side door. If you could do that immediately, that would be appreciated. Thank you. Good luck. Now I'd like to proceed to number 5 on the agenda, acceptance of the observers. It is my understanding that behind me on the screen, you may read the names of our partner institutions, our non-member states, and our list of observers. Thank you. Could I have now a show of hands to accept the observers unless there are any objections? By a show of hands, please. Those in favor? In favor of accepting the observers. Thank you. Those who'd like to abstain? Those opposed? Then this is carried. Thank you. I'd now like to move to the 6th item on the agenda, and this is to welcome new member states. And I'd like to turn this agenda item over to our Director General, please.
Joined ICCROM after the conclusion of the long-running process of the payment of the arrears of the Soviet Union and the heritage that was passed from Soviet Union partially to Russia Federation. It was a long process. We had a long discussion. We have to thank many people for their commitment, and we have to thank the Ministry of the Culture of the Russian Federation, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for having understood that the process took time, but we were expecting that Russian Federation comes back because we are all very aware of the relevance of the Russian heritage and of the importance that Russian professionals comes back in dialogue among professionals and among leading institutions for conservation. Therefore, I am very happy as a Director General of this organization to can count again on our friends and colleagues Russia. We are already starting to open concrete cooperation through a memorandum of understanding that we signed for a course in wooden architecture conservation. But I think that it's better to leave the floor to our delegates of the Russian Federation.
I would ask if the delegate of the Russian Federation would like to make an intervention at this time.
Уважаемый господин генеральный директор, уважаемый президент, уважаемые коллеги, на протяжении долгих лет членства России в ЮНЕСКО Министерство культуры Российской Федерации является активным и надежным партнером ведущей мировой гуманитарной организации, одним из важнейших направлений которой является защита, сохранение и популяризация уникальных объектов культурного наследия. Мы знаем, что сохранение культурного наследия, профессиональная поддержка памятников невозможно без привлечения высококлассных специалистов, владеющих самыми современными реставрационными методиками. Именно поэтому возобновление после 16-летнего перерыва членства России в ИКРОМ, который является не только ведущей международной организацией в сфере реставрации, но и одновременно консультативным органом ЮНЕСКО, представляется для нас одним из самых важнейших достижений последних лет. Доступ к международному опыту, современным обучающим программам и стажировкам, специализированной литературе, новейшим технологиям и оборудованию в области реставрации архитектурных памятников, музейного, архивного и библиотечного дела, который Российская Федерация получит в результате возобновления участия в ИКРОМ, позволит обеспечить конкурентоспособность российских реставраторов и специалистов в сфере культурного наследия, как на внутреннем, так и на международном рынках. Таким образом, участие России в ИКРОМ соответствует российским интересам в сфере сохранения культурного сотрудничества и будет способствовать развитию соответствующих направлений деятельности внутри страны. Мы надеемся на долгосрочное и продуктивное партнерство с ИКРОМ в благодарном и необходимом деле сохранения культурного наследия. Еще раз моя искренняя благодарность. Спасибо.
To remember that the work of negotiation with the Russian Federation has been conducted by over many years by this council, by the previous council, and I have to thank in a particular way my predecessor, Munir Bushnaki, who helped me to conduct a negotiation and a speech, a friendly speech, with the Russian colleague in order to achieve this important success. So I thank very much Munir, who sits over there, for this.
Thank you very much. I'd like to proceed to agenda item 7, and it is the adoption of the provisional agenda. I would ask the delegations if the agenda can be adopted. At this time, I would ask if there is anyone opposed to adopting the agenda as written. If not, then we move to the next item. Thank you very much for that. The agenda is adopted. I would now like to move to the next item, which is the ICCROM Award, and I will turn this over to the Chair of Council to please take this on.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. Je vais à mon tour donner la parole à la personne qui a conduit le groupe de travail consacré au prix ICCROM, qui n'est autre que Horacia Luciak, vous-même, Madame la Présidente.
The ICCROM Award was created to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the ICCROM Foundation and was presented for the very first time in 1979 and thereafter regularly at the General Assembly of ICCROM held every 2 years. The award is presented to a person who holds special merit in the field of protection, conservation, and restoration of cultural heritage and who has contributed to ICCROM's work. This year, one award will be presented. The recipient of the award is Dr. Weber Ndoro from Zimbabwe. I would ask that Dr. Ndoro please come to the podium, and I would request that ICCROM Vice Chair of Council, Brigitte Ringbeck, and ICCROM Sites Unit Director, Mr. Joe King, to please come forward to read the laudatio. Wrong name, I'm sorry. Britta Rudolph.
So, where's Weber?
He's here.
Oh, he's there. So I can't turn to you, unfortunately, if you're in the back, but I'll try. Oh, you have to go here? Why don't I go to the other side?
Okay.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairperson. It is with great pleasure that we present the 2015 ICCROM Award to Dr. Weber Ndoro on the occasion of the 29th session of the ICCROM General Assembly. Dr. Ndoro's accomplishments in the field of heritage conservation have had an important and lasting impact on ICCROM as an organization and on a generation of young heritage professionals in sub-Saharan Africa and around the world. Weber Ndoro has completed his BA in history at the University of Zimbabwe in 1982. His increasing interest in archaeology led him first to Cambridge University, where he received a Master of Philosophy in Archaeology in 1987, and then to York University for an MA in Architectural Conservation. He completed his formal education at Uppsala University in Sweden, where he received a PhD in Heritage Management in 2000. His love of education came early, as he spent 2 years as a secondary school teacher before joining the National Museums and Monuments of Zimbabwe in 1985. At the National Museums and Monuments of Zimbabwe, he worked as a curator of the Queen Victoria Museum in Harare, and then became conservator and site manager at the Great Zimbabwe World Heritage Site, a post that brought him directly into the World Heritage field, in which he is so influential today. From 1992 to 1994, he was co-coordinator of the Monuments Program at the National Museums and Monuments of Zimbabwe, which put him in charge of all conservation projects at heritage sites in Zimbabwe. Beginning in 1994, Ndoro moved to the University of Zimbabwe, where he lectured at both the undergraduate and graduate levels on the topic of heritage management. He has also lectured on heritage management at the University of Bergen in Norway and other international institutions. Ndoro's first involvement with ICCROM came in late 1998, when he was put in charge of the implementation of one of the first 3 site projects for the Africa 2009 program, the development of a management plan of Khami World Heritage Property in Zimbabwe. The successful implementation of these projects was strategically important for Africa 2009 in order to quickly demonstrate the value of the program to the region. He soon became indispensable to the program, acting as a resource person for many of the African 2009 courses and seminars starting in 1999, including the core 3-month course on conservation and management of immovable cultural heritage in sub-Saharan Africa. During this early phase of the program, he became one of the core group to guide its development. In 2002, Ndoro was then given a leave of absence by the University of Zimbabwe to work as a full-time ICCROM staff member on Africa 2009. In that capacity, he provided a much-needed African perspective at ICCROM to the planning and implementation of the program, as well as more generally making a significant contribution to ICCROM's ability to deliver its program to all member states. Between 2002 and 2005, he continued the implementation of regional courses and seminars, as well as side projects in Tanzania, Botswana, and elsewhere. His strong interest in the area of documentation and inventory, rock art, and living heritage approaches helped to take the program into new directions.
I had the pleasure of meeting Ndoro in 1998 when he first started working for the Africa 2009 program. It was clear from those first encounters that he was someone with a passion for the cultural heritage of Africa and a strong desire to share that passion with a worldwide audience. I considered myself very fortunate to have him come to ICCROM full-time to work on the program. In 2005, he became the lead project manager at ICCROM for Africa 2009, thus being the principal coordinator of the program and its more than 20 activities carried out each year. His work on Africa 2009 was instrumental in guiding the consolidation phase and the final phase of the program. Working closely with African directors of cultural heritage to ensure that African professionals and institutions were internalizing the progress being made by the program. It was Ndoro's guidance and leadership during those phases that guaranteed that the results of the program would be long-lasting beyond the 2009 end date. While at ICCROM, Ndoro edited 2 of the books on legal frameworks in Africa within the ICCROM Conservation Studies publication series, and authored a 3rd entitled The Preservation of Great Zimbabwe, Your Monument, Our Shrine, which was based on his PhD thesis work. Ndoro's contribution to ICCROM as a staff member rested not only on his work in sub-Saharan Africa, but also in providing his unique perspective as a resource person to other ICCROM courses and activities. His strong belief that understanding African heritage conservation would be of benefit to the worldwide discussion of heritage practice has helped to sensitize a generation of ICCROM participants. Ndoro left ICCROM in 2007 to become the first director of the African World Heritage Fund. In his current position, he is able to ensure that the positive outcomes of Africa 2009 are promoted and utilized in the region. Working for ICCROM on World Heritage issues, I have had the privilege of continuing to work closely with Ndoro over these past 8 years. He has maintained his links to ICCROM at the institutional level through partnerships on some activities with the African World Heritage Fund, and at a personal level by continuing to act as a resource person on ICCROM's Build Heritage course and other ICCROM activities, including the Forum on Conservation Science. During his mandate at the Africa World Heritage Fund, Ndoro has seen the organization grow and become one of the leading conservation organizations in the region. He was responsible for all of the initial work of building up the Africa World Heritage Fund and has ensured that it can be maintained on a sustainable basis. It is through his leadership and guidance that the Africa World Heritage Fund has managed to raise a significant endowment while at the same time planning and implementing well-thought-out programs and activities on heritage conservation. The programs implemented have included improving World Heritage nominations, strengthening disaster risk management, strengthening traditional management systems, and promoting entrepreneurship related to heritage in the region. The Africa World Heritage Fund has also partnered with the École de Patrimoine Africaine in Porto Novo, Benin, and the Center for Heritage Development in Africa in Mombasa, Kenya. The success of the Africa 2009 program, it was a true work of teamwork. It was a true teamwork effort. A committed group of professionals from both Africa and from partner international organizations worked together to achieve its goals. But it is under Ndoro's leadership that the program came into its own and began to really produce the positive results that we can see today. And we can see how those results have continued to multiply because of the work that he has continued to do after leaving ICCROM at the Africa World Heritage Fund. And if I can go off script for one moment, I just want to say that at a personal level, it has been a real pleasure to work with Dr. Ndoro. His wisdom, his approach to conservation, and his friendship have meant a lot to me in terms of the work that we are doing in the Sites Unit at ICCROM. And for that reason, for his outstanding service to ICCROM and for his outstanding service to the international conservation community, it gives both of us great pleasure to present this year's ICCROM Award to our friend and colleague, Dr. Weber Ndoro. Thank you.
Dear Weber Ndoro, cher Weber, c'est un grand plaisir pour moi aujourd'hui de vous remettre au nom de l'ICCROM et du Conseil de l'ICCROM le prix ICCROM. Je tiens à ajouter à tout ce qui vient d'être dit sur votre longue carrière, mais qui n'est pas terminée, nous l'espérons tous. Je tiens à ajouter que vous avez accepté encore tout récemment de participer au brainstorming qu'a organisé le Conseil de l'ICCROM sur les futures orientations stratégiques de l'organisation. Et vous y avez été, là aussi, porteur d'idées nouvelles dans des proportions qui m'ont fait véritablement découvrir à quel point vous méritez ce prix.
Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, comrades and friends, Salam alaikum. I'm truly humbled and honored to receive this award. My sincere gratitude go to the ICCROM Council, ICCROM staff, and all the colleagues for this honor. Honestly, I was surprised when I was told about the award, and sincerely believe that there are others whom I think were more deserving than me. I nonetheless accept the recognition you have given me. I also believe that the award is a result of a collective effort, and therefore it is an award for Africa and all the women and men who have over the years made effort to ensure that Africa's heritage is conserved, not just for future generations, but also for current ones too. Africa as a continent is rich in both natural and cultural heritage. Each of these facets of heritage reflects the wealth of our continent, the diversity of its past and its people, the splendor of its natural beauty. This heritage matters for Africans and for people from across the world as part of humanity's common wealth. By correctly managing and preserving our heritage and reminding Africans and the world of our true origins and the forgotten richness of our past, we can look forward to building a continent that fulfills its true potential. Our heritage is our history, the genesis of our legends. And if we do not tell our stories, nobody will. As the old adage goes, until the lion learns how to speak, every story will glorify the hunter. The challenges of heritage conservation in Africa are many and are increasing by the day. The conflicts in Mali, Congo DRC, in southern Sudan, in Nigeria, and others, have brought havoc to our heritage, and we need to find solutions to ensure that Africa prospers. Of course, we have also heard of conflicts in other parts of the world today, in Syria, and perhaps more recently, last week in Paris, and I should also add, even last night in Nigeria, in the city of Yalo, 32 people were killed by Boko Haram. So as we mourn and remember those who died in Paris, let's also give a thought to those who are dying in Nigeria in what I think is a senseless war. However, the question is aptly put by Dr. Nkosazana Zuma of the African Union when she says, how can heritage contribute to silencing the guns on our continent? The potential of heritage to play such a role is immense, but not when it is being bombarded on a daily basis. Apart from the conflict, there are also the challenges of conservation and economic development. We are all aware of the poverty and the lack of development on the continent of Africa. The construction of infrastructure, the extraction of resources, and energy requirements may result in the destruction of some of the continent's priceless heritage. It is my view that proper planning will allow both to coexist. I would therefore like to appeal to African decision makers to ensure that heritage is not sacrificed, for it too can be an economic driver. I should point out that I was actually introduced to ICCROM by none other than Joe King, who stands here. I didn't know ICCROM until 1998, when you then invited me to participate in its work. ICCROM has played a significant role in the development of the capacity to preserve and promote heritage all over the world, more so on the African continent. ICCROM has also taken a leading role in providing training in conflict and disaster areas, particularly in protecting world's heritage. Personally, I've benefited from many colleagues' wisdom and experiences, many of whom work or are affiliated to ICCROM. Without a doubt, they have collectively taught me and contributed to this particular day and than I have given to them. I want to again say how grateful I am to receive this award. While awards are wonderful to receive, just knowing that your professional colleagues appreciate the journey you have walked is truly rewarding enough. My greatest reward is the many young women and men from Africa who dedicate themselves to the development of heritage on our continent. I had the privilege to work with some of them over the years. It is my sincere hope that they will be given the same opportunities as I had to show their government and the world the potential they have. As one of the greatest sons of Africa reminds us, Frantz Fanon, each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it or betray it in relative opacity. I would also want to thank ICCROM for giving me the opportunity to demonstrate my abilities. And I also want to thank the government of South Africa, particularly for providing Africa with a platform to try and help Africa preserve its heritage through the African World Heritage Fund. In the same vein, I also thank UNESCO and the Africa Union, and indeed my own country for providing me the opportunity to serve the continent and the world. The journey has been long, but as we all know that however long the night might be, dawn will break. Shukran.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ndoro, and congratulations from all of your fellow delegates here. And thank you again to Britta Rudolph and Joe King for Laudatio. And I wanted to inform you that a copy of the Laudatio will be available to member state delegations at the delegates' reception desk. I also believe that the photographers wanted to take a photograph. Would you like to do that now? Yes? So I would ask if you could.
We have to go?
Yes. I'd also like to inform the delegates at this time, before we have a break for lunch, that we have a wonderful reception this evening, and I hope that all of you have had the opportunity to sign up for the bus transfer to attend the social event this evening at Palazzo Poli. And if you haven't done so, if you could, as we're breaking for lunch, go to the desk and sign up. The staff would like to know how many will be in attendance, and they need to know how many buses they require for this evening. So if you could do that, that would be very much appreciated. And I'm very impressed that it's 1 o'clock and we're on time.
Yes.
I'm very impressed by that. We are going to come back, if you could have your lunch break now, and if you could punctually be back at 2:30 as we will begin our thematic discussion. So I wish you a good break. Thank you.